Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Okay, the bell's gone. It's the 7th of November 2024. My name is Adam Spence, and I've got my co-host Brent Poland with us tonight. And we're here to, as Education Tonight always is, to kind of go through the topical kind of stories of the day. We try and kind of keep it kind of on the money as we can as things come out. Busy day today for both of us. I think we've just about, so I can see you're still in your work clothes. I've just about managed to kind of get changed and kind of get here tonight. So hopefully we're going to have a kind of a very good show talking about AI, potentially kind of, not replacing teachers, but certainly kind of helping and supporting teachers. But can it be a tool that we can use to help reduce some of the workload? And the other kind of contentious issue this week was, tuition fees. After a kind of Labour Party that kind of said they weren't going to increase tuition fees, we now found that they do have to actually put them up because of some other kind of things. So it's that kind of friend or foe thing with AI at the minute. Is it a friend or future enemy? And particularly kind of Brent as well. I'm sure you'd like to chip in there from a kind of union rep point of view and thinking about jobs, thinking about kind of job security.
More than that, I mean, look, being a child of the late 70s, 80s, being what generation do we belong to? Xers, I think.
Well, we'll be either millennial or X.
No, I'm not millennial. No. I think
we're about on the 1980s. You kind of fall. I think
they call us Xers because we're near the end of Generation X, and they say that we've got the foot in both camps because we are the first to be digitally native, but also, we grew up with drinking water out of hoses and lack of health and safety, and basically doing rather crazy things now that would seem to be considered risk.
Apparently Lucy says we are Gen X.
We are Gen X, so I mean that's the thing, and I think it gives us a interesting understanding of the older generation, but also the younger. We're a bit of a bridge generation in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But being a child of that era, I mean, I love my sci-fi. I love my sci-fi books, novels. I mean, I grew up watching your sci-fi genre, and that was one of the big sci-fi genres of the 80s: Blade Runner, Terminator. A lot of stuff. I mean, and even into the millennials, you're into iRobot. Isaac. I was reading a lot of Isaac Asimov. Do robots dream of electronic sheep? Visionaries have been predicting this, and in fact, taking it all the way back to the original sci-fi genre. One of the first ever sci-fi movies was Fritz Lang's Metropolis, which has got features in Radio Gaga. The video for Radio Gaga by Queen. And I remember watching the video for Radio Gaga as Queen and then realizing that's actually a 1920s, art house German movie, which was so ahead of its time. And it was predicting and literally this, wasn't it? So it was 100 years ago that people were starting to think about the potential for technology to overrule and rule mankind. And this is the stuff of kind of sci-fi fiction that has become sci-fi reality. We are in that area. And of course, a lot of those movies were always warning us about, I think, therefore I am, artificial intelligence will replace us. We are Neanderthals to our artificial intelligence being Homo sapiens. So there's a lot of philosophers and a lot of individuals out there trying to come to understand, where human development is going here. And if we're not careful, we could potentially create something which could realistically destroy us. But
it wasn't just in the scientific world, and we'll pause to kind of say hello to our sponsors in a moment. But the Maynard Keynes had a famous paper about the letter to my grandchildren, where he talked about the age of leisure that we should be in now and how technology is going to help that. You've got all those kind of dystopian authors as well: Orwell, Brave New World, Huxley, H.G. Wells. You've got all that stuff kind of playing into that, but also it brings us right up to the modern day. That the one of the driving projects that we're going to look at tonight is from kind of someone that's been in the news a lot, particularly over the last week. Elon Musk and the Tesla kind of group has kind of, is kind of at the forefront of this. But I remember kind of going back again, showing my age a little bit, that when middle of secondary school, about year 8, getting kind of Windows 95, having kind of Encarta, and my dad going, well, you'll never look up anything again because it's just kind of on the kind of CD-ROM. It's all on the computer. But
we've said it so many times before. When you realize what's in somebody's pocket now, the power that's in children's pocket, and yet I reflected on it today when I'm looking at the lack of knowledge that our children have, but yet the amount of information they're exposed to. There's a massive disconnect between the knowledge they retain. But then going back to our generation, we had to memorize telephone numbers. We had to memorize, we had to use our brains a lot more. And I think for survival, and I think as we become more dependent on technology, we become less used to surviving. You sort of think to yourself, well, actually, that complacency is filtering down into our children. And it's not laziness. It just becomes that lifestyle.
Yeah, it's just a new method, isn't it? It's a new way of doing things.
It's next evolution. And maybe we're becoming the kind of Luddites because of our age, and we're not accepting the world. And it is the speed that this is happening is phenomenal.
Well, I think we'll have a good debate between us here, because I hope you don't mind me saying, but I think I'm kind of more pro kind of AI than you are.
I'm cautionary because
you're cautious. So maybe I am try and convince you.
History teaches me that this technology could be corrupted by rampant, I would say, on industrial capitalism. And I mean, when I look at previous times, when you see, for instance, like where the First World War came from, and huge shifts in global populations, some people have been winners and a lot of people have been massive losers, and that's worries me that this could be exploited, used, and manipulated for nefarious reasons. But maybe I'm, as I say, influenced too much by those dystopian novels.
Yeah, right. We were the kind of that generation, but I think it's important. You do want to kind of mark, but we can't kind of not talk about the US this today, can we? Because there has been a kind of historical kind of change in the US, and we kind of, although it's not going to hit education to the point, a lot of students, a lot of teachers are kind of thinking about kind of what does it mean. I know you've got a kind of a slide or a bit of
I've done part of it because it was quite ironic as a history teacher, having the sort of 5th of November, and one of my colleagues remarked on us that we had, for instance, the UK had their election on July the 4th, which is the American firework night, and the Americans had their election on November the 5th, which is the firework night. So it's kind of like they were completely reversed. So you have firework night, and then you've got democracy that somewhere is sort of saying could be under attack and all the rest. And kids were asking me a lot about it this week, and I was honest with them and says, look, at the end of the day, America's had presidents before. They've had President Trump. They've had President Nixon, the Vietnam War. Maybe the difference is that our generation is more aware of what's going on with these presidents, whereas previous presidents like JFK was having multiple affairs with actresses like Marilyn Monroe, and we only found that out later on. So it's a different world again we're living in, and again you sort of have to sort of look at things and take a step back sometimes. And I think the world we're living in now gets very sort of and sort of take a deep breath, take a step back, calm down. And I think people's reactions now are so instant on the likes of social media that we need to probably, as educators, sometimes be the voice of reason and the voice of context, which I think is important.
I think it's kind of I don't want to go into this too much. Maybe we can do a show in a couple of weeks about it. But I thought it was interesting. Kind of, I watched the Channel 4 coverage. I kind of flipped and flopped around, but I kind of I ended up kind of just settling on the Channel 4 coverage of it. And I think some of the interesting points they were making, because they had our previous Prime Minister on it, and where it kind of links in, I think, to education is how we kind of assess the institutions around education and what it means now to be kind of, telling the truth, making those kind of key points that are kind of truthful. That's kind of interesting, I think, because Boris Johnson particularly was pressed a lot about is Donald Trump, are you, is the kind of future politic, is it more kind of bending the rules and not sticking to authority so much? So I guess that is where it's going to impact on us, especially if we're
well, there is a connection to our publisher, which because Boris Johnson was chucked off and sacked from Channel 4 News because he was inappropriately trying to hawk his book. But we're not going to do that because we are.
What I'll say to Boris is one of our earlier podcasts was cut short because
because he was doing exactly that. Exactly, yeah. We've been cut off before because somebody was trying to, steal a bit of advertising for their book.
It's difficult to control, but John Catt. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. As always, you can use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order, and you can see the link kind of scrolling along the bottom there, which is fantastic. That's back to kind of the analog world of having a nice book. The books that I've had from John Catt, particularly, kind of nice and small, nice pocket size, kind of stuff you can stick in your toolkit. And kind of just get a quick hit of a kind of good resource. Or
the size of the catalog they have, I mean, it's they have a very, very good catalog. And I'm not saying no because they sponsor us, but because generally I do look through it and think it's good. It's really, really good. And you're right, it is sometimes you need overwrought when you think I've got to read all this.
It gets too much. So sometimes you look at those teacher standards and you think about kind of where CPD comes. You're thinking, where's this all fitting into ours? But this is something that could actually help us, Brent, because the world of AI is upon us. So covered in kind of the small print and just mentioned ever so slightly in the budget was this comment about kind of efficiencies within public sector. We've got JLB there saying America was way ahead of the UK as far as classroom technology was concerned back in 2021, 22. I think you mean it's 2022 there. My school in Florida went crazy and it set children back a few years. I guess it depends kind of what you are kind of testing and what you are kind of referencing. Yeah. The National Merit Scholars dropped from an average of 30 to 9 in 2 years. And we went back to pen to paper. So there was that shift, wasn't there, between in the UK particularly back to that's better 2012. I thought you jumped into the future there, JLB. But we definitely kind of did that in the UK. I was very much I felt like I was very much at the forefront of that from 2004 to 2009. We had that kind of new traditional kind of curriculum that came in 2010. Everything went back to those R's and rote learning. And that's when we got that kind of full, heavy content that we are within now. But anyway, in with the budget that was mentioned a couple of weeks and the show we did last week, there was this thing about efficiency. And the previous Secretary of State particularly was keen on how we can use AI technologies within the classroom to really support teachers and particular workload. Because ultimately, this is the big question that we've been trying to solve, for a number of months now, years, if not a couple of years now, we've been on Teachers Talk Radio. Teachers are leaving the profession in their droves because of workload. I think that's kind of a fair statement to make.
Yes and no. I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something controversial that's been really bugging me. I don't think that's completely the case. I think it's a perception of workload. I just think the next generation of teachers aren't as stoic and hardcore as previous generations. I think there's a societal shift. And I think, honestly speaking, I think people are not realizing that teaching is a vocational occupation. I'm going to say it. And I'm a union rep, but schools are run on teachers who go the extra mile. And I'm noticing a kind of a lot of pushback across the teaching profession, whether it's because I firmly believe, and this is my opinion, and a lot of trusts become so corporate, people have went, right, fine, we're corporate now. Corporate means I walk out the door. They're getting what they want. Yeah. They're getting what they want. And I think there is a dying
that's the free market, isn't it? It can't be. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. If you're going to push this private onto me.
But you go into a lot of staff rooms and you ask teachers, and we are serial moaners. We are literally never happy. We've never been happy. And I've been 21 years in teaching, and we never. But there's a definite sort of increase of what was me, hard done by us, morale. And morale is low, and goodwill is drying up. So if you ask a lot of teachers, I can ask teachers in any generation about workload, and they will say similar things. So we have to separate genuinely where teachers are being overworked, and genuinely where teachers are, I think, perceiving that they have a hard done by-ness, because every teacher in the world will say they're hard done by, and I don't think that is the case. I think there are teachers out there who work really hard, 40 and 50, 60 hours a week, and there are some that work harder than they should because they feel guilty, and I think that's the other aspect of those that work hard. The car parks, you can look around the car parks of some schools and say to yourself, who's still here at 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening? Who's marking books? Who's doing all the hard work, and who's out the door as soon as those buses pull off? We all know them. And I'm sorry, I think the profession has had hard times, but equally at the same time, there is a definite feeling I'm getting that there is just, come on, guys, we're teachers. Teachers do a lot more, and teachers have to contribute a lot more sometimes. And I know that's not going to make me a lot of favors, but I'm just getting a little bit niggled by, workload is one of the things that there are plenty. My dad worked 70-hour weeks, 60-hour weeks to put food on the table as a plasterer, a tiler, and working 3 jobs. There are plenty of our parents who are working multiple jobs as well. It's hard work teaching. It's really knackering. I absolutely get that. But we are privileged a lot of the time to be teachers, and privileged to be teachers. And when it comes to technology, people think that technology is going to make our lives easier. I'm going to be honest with you. It hasn't made my life any easier as a teacher since I've been using technology.
Okay. If we change the word easier then to maybe better, maybe it can help us work a bit smarter. Maybe it can actually kind of develop some things that we're not yet aware of. We've talked at length. We were thinking about doing a show. Maybe we'll do it next week, because I think there's been some movement today actually on SEND and kind of what's going on. And we know that there's this growing need from SEND. And if we can put the Forbes article up that we kind of got this from, it was literally the idea is that actually this Optimus robot that Tesla have kind of developed with AI technology is there to try and support students with additional learning needs. So I kind of send students essentially. And, one of the things that, we've talked about before is that, rightly so, legally, everyone has the right to a kind of inclusive education in the UK through a comprehensive system. But that is getting kind of increasingly challenging for the individual teacher in the room, particularly, I'm sure teachers have had their registered this year, and they've looked down the list, and I've heard stories where 40-50% of the class has a kind of a registered or diagnosed SEND need, plus a kind of learning plan within it. So this now becomes like a huge challenge of how do we kind of personalized learning, because that's what parents are kind of expecting, that's what they want. From all teachers that I kind of know myself, you want to try and deliver that the best that you can. However, it's incredibly challenging, incredibly tiring. And over the course of a year, if you're having kind of classes of 30, 35, 5-6 hour periods a day, that is going to start kind of actually, running some teachers to the ground, trying to support all those students we need. So this is a potential solution to that, where the robot itself could be a kind of almost a personalized tutor within the classroom.
But something, what a lot of those children need? Time with their parents, time with their teachers, time. We are living in an environment now where I think we're just so time poor. And same as mental health. Why do we have so many mental health problems? You have to ask yourself the question, is that those mental health problems driven because there is less community, less connections, less human to human connections, less time to talk? And yet we have never had a generation of, say, for instance, children who talk nonsense online to each other, but they don't make the actual connections.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm keen to do, I stay behind after school on a Thursday, have a cup of tea with my students and build a relationship. My parents, even last night, the amount of parents that remarked and that went, it's really good you stay behind. I think, yeah, now I'm giving up some of my time. I'm not paid for it. I'm not minute counting. It's part of my job. Now, others may criticize me and say that puts others under pressure. It's up to them. I want to build a good relationship with my students because when it comes down to it, when they walk in that exam hall, I want them to go in there and go, I'm doing it for that guy. I want to get the top grade because I care about that subject, because my teacher cares about me, because my teacher cares what grade I get, because he's invested in me. He's invested time in me. He's invested thing. And I don't know if an AI robot is the same because it's programmed. And this is the danger of it, the depersonalization of technology, you know, sticking kids in front of screens, you know, give them an AI robot, that'll sort them out. You know, it's for me, it's the equivalent of giving them an iPad. Yeah, that'll help them out. That'll really sort them out. Yeah. It's a very slippery slope again to sort of saying, oh, just let the robot fix it. You know, oh, the kids are fine. They're upstairs. They're behaving themselves. Well, what are they on their iPads? I worry if schools become these places where technology becomes more dominant. They go home and the technology is more dominant. We're going to have a generation of completely disconnected children.
But I think kind of as JLB and kind of what I said kind of earlier, we have had a kind of decade really of moving away from technology, essentially kind of in classroom and going back to a more traditional method. And I guess statistically you could look at that and say, well, it's never really been worse education in terms of attendance, in terms of mental health, in terms of outcomes. So,
but is that because of what's happening in school?
Well, yeah. This is where we always need to make that decision, Brent, don't we? I get all that. We can wax lyrical about the state of society, but are we likely to ever fix that within the education system, or do we just have to move with it and just accept? You know, however much we dislike that world, you know, and we'd rather have a kind of another world until we get to that point. What do we need to do now for the thousands of students who aren't getting the right SEND provision and are really, really struggling? They're really struggling.
You reduce the class sizes, you give the teachers more time, you increase the funding, you return school nurses, you start to help the parents educate children. There's a big debate I had with a lot of my colleagues about phonics, for instance, and you know, trying to help parents help, because honestly speaking, I am here as a result of two groups of individuals, not my secondary school teachers. I'm a secondary school teacher. There's not my secondary school teachers that made a difference to me. My primary school teachers, and there's 83 people in my primary school, 3 teachers in a small country school, and I learned crafts, arts, technology. I learned all sorts of stuff. And I had a lot of time with teachers, a lot of time with classmates, because it was less pressured, and there was I wasn't worried about the 11 plus. And then the second group is my parents, who sat me down and I was watching television, documentaries, Attenborough. Sunday afternoon was Attenborough time, as a family, discussing things, discussing politics around the dinner table, time. And even though my father worked so many hours, he made time to spend with me. My mother would be there to do my homework, to be checking up on me. Parents even was important. My parents were invested in my education. They made sure I could read and write. They did please and thank you. They did my manners. They did my basics. My grandparents were involved in my education. My brother was involved in my education. Community was involved in my education. And that's not happening any longer. It's now.
But this is my question to you. If you kind of, you know, look across the political or social landscape now, how likely is that going to be happening in the short to medium term future?
I think
I don't disagree with you, but you know, we've got a current crisis, you know, and you know, we need to kind of think about kind of shorter term solutions. I forget the price of this. I think it's £20,000 or something for one robot.
That's a newly qualified teacher. Job done. There you go. Train a new qualified teacher, 20 grand. Keep your robot and get a new teacher. Job done.
Okay. They walk out the door in a year's time after being qualified, as is happening.
Well, we then have to work hard to keep them.
Well, yeah, and I do get that, and I'm kind of really empathetic to that kind of viewpoint. But I'm just worrying now that So JLB says we should focus on arming teachers. I thought he was actually saying arming teachers with arms. I'm glad you kind of reread it.
It's probably going to be a policy in parts of this. I think it is actually. Isn't it? Yeah.
I thought he was talking about like toured of robots then for 1 minute. I'm glad I kind of had a second reader. Arming teachers with as much technology as possible. They can be trusted to use tech wisely. So definitely, I think one of the pleasing things is I have a student from university teaching with me at the moment, and AI is a prominent part of their PGCE, which is good to see actually, because I think there's actually so many teachers that are completely de-skilled in ICT, just generally. Never mind the AI bits at all. AI is not even featured on their kind of toolkit really. They've still got stuff flying around a PowerPoint, i.e. 1990 style.
But that's what I mean. You need time. You need time to teach the teachers before the teachers stand up in front of them. But there's always been that. Children have always been. I remember that in some ways, my coursework, my GCSE coursework in '94, and I was using one of the first versions of Excel. And I was looking at my teacher, and a lovely guy, but he had no idea about how to use Excel. I stayed behind after school, figured it out, and then word processed and actually used first set of graphs. It's like 30 years ago. And I was showing my teacher, look, this is how you do, this is how you do. And he's like, how'd you figure that out? And then I sort of realized, people when you get to a certain age, you sort of going like, I've had enough. I just want to go in there, do it analog. And there is that point where the kids are savvier and faster and they pick up things in technology. And that's natural. That should be the way. We do have to let children naturally, organically learn the way that we naturally, organically learn to program the VCR. So my parents had no idea what I was watching late at night because I wasn't up late at night, but I programmed it late at night. I mean, we've always had that situation where kids have the ability to learn. Which one of the things that upsets me is when kids play a possum and go, "Sir, I can't do that." And you think, "Of course you can do that. Download free music off some illegal website. You mean you can't do that answer?" And they look at you and go, "Oh yeah." And it's like when you're playing computer games, and I use that analogy. When you're playing your computer game, you start in hard mode or easy mode. When you start in beginner mode, so I explained scaffolding to kids the other day by going, when you play FIFA, you start off on semi-pro mode, and then you get better at it. Then you move up to pro mode, you make it world class. And it's kids like, "Oh yeah, that's true." It says, but the thing of it is, you keep coming back and keep playing the game, don't you? And you keep evaluating your performance. And the kids are capable of learning so much. Our children are capable of learning so much. And I don't think we get the best out of them, because you're right. And I think JBL is right there. We aren't giving them the opportunities to use the technology and managing their use of the technology. And that's what worries me. It's the same as parents are just handing iPads and phones to their kids and saying, "Yeah, fine, off you go." And there's no learning in it, no teaching in it. It's just basically the kids are running amok. And the problem with that is they're running amok and finding things that they shouldn't do, and there's no checks, balance, regulations. And then they come to school and it's like the kids are writing stuff down and their brains are working faster because they're so technological in some ways. But the other side of it is, you're right, they can't use a PowerPoint, they can't use an Excel spreadsheet, they can't, type, look at a mouse and go, "What's that?" Because they're basically in a world where they're touch screen, flick, touch screen, doom scrolling fast. It's not producing, I think, desirable outcomes for the children, because they're taking shortcuts. And yes, I took shortcuts as a kid, but we still have a system where we get children to go into an exam hall and try and concentrate for 2 hours and retain knowledge for 2 hours. They just simply can't do it because their life outside school is completely one way, and life in school is completely the other. So either we just, you say, bite the bullet and go, right, the ship is sailed, we might as well embrace the technology and stop being a Luddite, Brent. Or it's, look, we need to then somehow say, look, what's happening at home, guys, this is not healthy for the children, this is not how they should learn, we need to blend it in. And that's got to come from government as much as it's got to come from us, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of an interesting kind of conversation, isn't it? Because, we tiptoed around it with the kind of previous governments. Unless I've missed something, I really don't know where Bridget Phillipson is on this. I haven't heard a lot of her around kind of technology and, also kind of what the purpose of education is, from her kind of like that value statement of kind of, it's great what she's saying. She values every student. She wants to give everyone the best opportunities. But where is she on kind of what students should actually be doing, and we haven't had that curriculum review yet. We're waiting for all these reviews. I mean, I had an open evening tonight. I'm literally talking about kind of BTECs. I mean, it's embarrassing as a teacher going, I think they're going to be okay, BTECs. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if funding's going to be there. I'm still not. We're starting to enroll the next students onto courses, which we don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Should we have a look at JBL's comment, and then we'll have a look at some of the evidence from the Forbes magazine, which I think is really insightful. Now, it's based on US research, but it shows us what the wider sort of education establishments in America are thinking about it. And I think we already have established that the US is further on. I think JBL will confirm that the US is a bit further on than the UK when it comes to this. So obviously, whatever happens in the US, sometimes then obviously we always know comes over to the UK as it tends to do. But his point, I think, is exactly what I'm suggesting: is handwriting slows us down, but in a beneficial way. Exactly, it's the processing. It's the brain needs to process the information, and a lot of our kids now bypass that processing, go straight to the result, and go, "I've done it." And how many times have I had a child now going like, they're so quick to finish a task, and go, "I've done it," and go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." And this is why we're doing things like deeper thinking tasks, where we have to slow the children down and go, no, I'm looking for higher quality, because they're so task driven, because all the games they play is like, go. They're slot machines, aren't they? They want to be.
It's reward based learning, isn't it?
It's the dopamine. It's the instant hit. And you think to yourself, no, I want you to slow down, and I want you to prepare that. And it's hard to do that, because they'll go to you, I have to write all that down. Yeah, you have to write it all down, because I want you to process it. I want you to figure it out. But let's have a look at these slides.
Yeah, let's look at some data. Let's look at some kind of facts and figures.
Yes. So we'll look at, first of all, how's AI influenced. Just to get this the right. Yes, thank you. How's AI influenced teaching and learning and processing classrooms? So according to the research Forbes have done, I think it's Dan Fitzpatrick as well has done this, isn't it? And we've had Dan on our show. He's one of the leading voices in this. And they suggest that 55% of educators have said that AI has improved educational outcomes. So that's quite positive. Only 18% have said it's hindered educational outcomes, 17% no significant impact, and 10% not sure. So one of those things I'd love to see in the future is remember Hattie's sort of action research that had all the things that impact upon. I always love that. I'd be interested to see, some really good.
I mean, is that about kind of, if you look at if you put the other three outcomes together, is it about a 50-50 split there? I think it is, isn't it?
It's 55-45, isn't it? So, well, not sure. So 55 is saying that it has an improved education outcome. So according to this, AI at the moment is having a positive impact on education. And I suppose that's fine. I don't disagree with that. I think as we are at the moment, I think AI is a useful tool, but it isn't everything. It's part of our toolbox, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a toolkit resource, isn't it?
Yeah. So we'll move to the next slide, please. So we're looking next at how have you integrated artificial intelligence into your classroom to improve or streamline your teaching responsibilities? So this is looking at workload and saying, have you tried to use a bit of AI in managing your workload?
So these are teachers in the USA?
Yes. So 60% say they have. And 35% say they have not. So there is a definite sort of shift again to, AI helping and streamlining and improving efficiency. And 60% of US teachers who answered Forbes said, they had used AI in some form to streamline tasks to improve efficiency. So again, that's positive, isn't it? That's saying, right, okay, well, that's at the moment is a useful tool in our toolbox and may help us buy back a bit of time or streamline or help us with some tasks. But interestingly, just over a third there, 35% have said, no, they haven't. Be interesting to see whether those that haven't are unaware of AI, don't value AI, or overloaded to the point where like AI is just one of those other things. In other words, they just don't want any more.
There'll be a couple of things to compare that data to, wouldn't there? I.e., the demography of teachers. Like, is it the older generation that's not picking it up? Is it the younger generation that's doing it? I don't know why 1%.
Yeah, in America, elementary to high school, there could be, and again, why haven't they? Maybe because they're not aware. I say, would it be an awareness issue? Could it be a fear issue, or just could it be a kind of I don't want to do that issue, because some people do resist new systems and new changes, and it takes a while for that to filter through.
Yeah, I always love a poll when you have the prefer not to say. It's like, especially in an issue like this, like,
you fence sitting.
No one's going to judge you.
Fence sitter, honest to goodness, you. This is why you're the nicer of the two presenters here. We know this to be true, don't we? Yeah. You're the least controversial. I'm just whack it in there. What AI tool applications have you encountered in educational settings? So this is where have they seen AI? What AI have they come across in education? So AI-powered educational games. So that's interesting. So AI-powered games, which can give kids instant feedback, and I suppose that gives them kind of constant sort of, thinking, and that'd be good for brain development in the sense of, AI evolves. I mean, be honest with you, I play computer games. When you think about it, when you play computer games, you're up against an AI generated, ironically, in your computer. Yeah. And, when you're playing, football or, a game on, not online, you are actually competing. And funny thing is that the children do figure out, it's like the old games when we were kids, you'd figure out when the baddie comes to when you shoot, when the baddie comes to when you shoot, because they were they not sort of artificially generated algorithms, wasn't it? They were algorithms.
It was more kind of algorithmic rather than kind of AI. I guess that's where they're going, these games. They will go into that kind of AI.
I think they already are. Some of the best games are adaptive, aren't they? And as a result of adaptive, they tend to then present a good challenge, and kids do like that, don't they? We have adaptive learning platforms. We have automated grading and feedback systems. So that's quick, fast marking, and we know that feedback needs to be as quick as possible. So that again could be a positive in the sense of, if you're waiting 2 weeks to get your marking back, but this marking was back quite instant, the feedback coming back
yeah,
fast.
There's lots of people, certainly I know from the kind of business teachers community, there is some development in that in terms of the longer mark essay questions. It is getting better and better at kind of supporting teachers kind of, mark and give feedback. So as a teacher, what you can do is you can focus on kind of doing more practice and just getting the feedback, and then being able to, this is where the teacher skill is, I think, is with your relationship, is tailoring the message that AI gives. That's certainly something that teachers can do really well.
Control, i.e. you still need to be the focus of the learning, you still need to be the trainer, you still need to be the facilitator, you still got to be in charge, not the android, not the robot, not the 20,000 pound, Tesla thing. It's got to be.
But it's only like a kind of football coach getting the data from a match from all their kind of wearable tech during a football match, isn't it? And then sitting there with the coaches and analysing that data, then feeding it back to the player. That's what I'm saying.
Same as the Formula One, isn't it? They get the telemetry and then they make the real decision based upon the telemetry, don't they?
I mean, that's my point. In lots of fields in life where coaching happens, actually the use of technology and AI is used really well. Education doesn't seem to have been touched by it at all. I've often thought kind of, why aren't we using wearable tech with some students to understand them a bit more? Wouldn't it be good if you knew exactly kind of how anxious a particular student was at the start of a lesson, and you could tailor that? Because remember, there's a lot of masking going on sometimes with SEND and mental health.
Things like heart rate, things like breathing.
Imagine if you had a bit of a desktop kind of application that said, actually, this person here currently is feeling very anxious. So you can almost more immediately kind of deal with the needs rather than
the kids sitting at the front of my room, not the ones sitting at the back. There'd be a reason. I'd be thinking to myself, "Good, young things, excellent. I've got them."
It's a bit of a side. It's always funny when you do open evenings and the parents kind of come into the classroom and they do exactly the same again. They go and sit right at the back of the class. We were like, no, come forward, come forward.
Well, one of the oldest techniques of behavior management is to go and sit on the edge of the desk of a child who's absolutely annoying you and watching their body language is cringe away. And it's a subtle little one to do. Think yourself, if you had the heart rate monitor up, like, he's coming towards me. Imagine then you go like, you're lying to me. No, I'm not lying to you. Well, your heart rate's just telling me something different. There's so many.
I mean, I did look this because my previous job, I was kind of AI I was head of AI as the head teacher kind of called it. And we were kind of trying to look at, imagine we've got all this massive data in schools. So this is where it can kind of really come into it. We collect all this data all the time, from kind of feedback from QAs, feedback from staff, feedback from students. We have their kind of test results. We have all the data that comes from primary school. We have different sources that feed in all the time. And essentially, we just become overwhelmed. So we end up just with the target grade as a way to kind of focus it all in, really. But that's not really a true. It's not a live reflection of what's happening.
This is the thing that worries me, is that there is more to a person than sometimes the data and the statistics.
Yeah.
And forgive me for this as a veteran, but instinct, gut instinct, feeling, emotion, a good teacher has developed a set of skills and a set of instincts that sometimes the data cannot tell. I had this with a student, and had one of those school improvement gurus paid an absolute fortune. Don't get me started. And he was arguing with me, this child cannot be a level 9. I'm going, this child is a level 9. Well, according to the data, he's level 4. And I went, no, he's going to get a level 9. And I knew it. The Fisher Family Trust said one thing, because he was a working class kid, his handwriting was illegible, he had terrible stats, all the rest of it, all the statistics, all the data was saying, this kid, there's something about him. He has drive, his heart, he's got motivation. He sat down with me and said, sir, I know I get people premium money towards me. Instead of like buying a laptop I don't need, can I buy some of your time? I was like, you don't have to buy some of my time. Well, just ask me to sign up to school and stay with you. What do you want me to talk about? You want to talk about politics? You want to talk about the world? He just wanted my time to pick my brain, to help him out, figure some things out in the world. And from that's where I started doing some after school sessions, because he benefited from that. And he really did benefit from that. And the thing is, he got a level 9. And I can tell you, he's off now at top university, completely defying all statistics and all odds, because the human factor, not the Android factor, the human factor. And then when it comes down to it, the human factor is what makes us. What makes my job so amazing. Is that you can never fully can boil out a child down to a set of numbers. And I think with the risk, I'm saying it again, saw it during COVID with rogue algorithms and anything else. And we can't do this to our kids. Statistics and damn statistics, but the human element can never, ever sometimes be quantified. Absolutely can't.
Okay, anyway, it's right. So we've phrased the question, because we may as well. We want to kind of move on to a kind of second story tonight. That has kind of gone a bit halfway, but it's been a fantastic conversation and a good debate, to kind of iron out those issues. But the question is, do you think it can kind of support teacher workload? If you had to, remember, you can't sit on the feet, you can't do it. I prefer not to say.
I think for the moment it can, but I don't think it's going to be long before people catch on in hard up trusts and hard up organizations and thinking, well, teacher recruitment problem solved. AI and cheap robot from. I think we've got to be very careful that we are not going to be done out of a future and done out of a career and a job. And I think there's going to be a lot of that with automation and AI. And I think we need to be very careful that what I just said about the human factor has to come first, that we are not replaced, because you can't replace what sometimes we teachers do. I mean, I have my artwork down here, which...
Yeah, go on, show us.
I have my artwork down here. Now, it's not culturally misappropriate. It's from the 1990s, so just don't sort of put it in context. This took me 6 months to create. It got me an A.
I didn't realise there was like a whole neck underneath as well. Is that a whole?
Oh, there's a whole thing. And that was my GCSE art project. Stayed behind after school to create it. But one of the reasons I did it, because I wanted to spend time with my art teacher. He was an absolutely brilliant guy. Inspires me to this day. Sadly, passed away a couple of years ago. And that's the thing, is that this is about it's about motivation, it's about drive, it's about desire, it's about education. Is more than just numbers and exam results. It's about achieving. It's about achieving more. It's about pushing the kids beyond where they can be pushed. And only I think we can do that as teachers. That's part of our job. And it's got to be, or else what are we doing? We're not, I think government sometimes see us as glorified babysitters. We're not. We are rescuing factors, because that's the thing. We can make a difference. We can and have made differences. Anybody listening to this is probably, think of a teacher in your life that made a difference and replace them with a robot. Come on. You know what I mean? It's just not going to work. But the problem...
Well, it's one of those things that kind of, I remember good teachers, but I also remember Windows 95 and Encarta, and that kind of changed me into kind of the IT computer teacher that I was, but now that business studies teacher. So Encarta, correct. It was Encarta 95, absolutely superb program. You know, I remember sitting there kind of wandering off at the time into all sorts of stuff that I didn't know. And that was my kind of access to independent learning and kind of my want then, really. If I could track my kind of progress, school was a kind of bit of a plod along, had this tool in front of me, all of a sudden I can go off and kind of do my own thing. So we want to move on to kind of tuition fees, but I just want to repeat again that this show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore a full range of titles. Use code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. I do think sometimes there should be a comma in there. I need a kind of red pen to give me a bit of a breath halfway through that sentence. But thank you very much, John, for your support, and everyone at kind of John Catt and the resources that they do. Got kind of 14 minutes, so it's going to be a bit rushed, but there was a clear pledge, as far as I was aware, from the Labour in opposition, and kind of through the kind of conversations during the kind of the election, that tuition fees really was something that Labour Party, particularly, even though they were the party that introduced tuition fees, were going to either try and kind of, you know, certainly put a pause on any kind of increase. But if anything, kind of the way people like Angela Rayner were talking during the election, although it wasn't explicitly said, there was a kind of undercurrent there that something needs to happen with your tuition fees, because it's stopping kind of social mobility, which is all kind of good kind of Labour stuff. Very quickly into a kind of new government now, we've got a increase in tuition fees. So what's your kind of immediate kind of reaction to that? Was that kind of, again, going back to kind of what we were talking about earlier about kind of misleading, not telling truths, not worrying about institutions? Is that one of these, or is it looking at the kind of the cold hard facts now? They're in government and saying, actually, this just needs to change, otherwise universities will be broke.
Education is not a business. Education is a right. And a person should never be discriminated against their ability to pay versus their ability. And that is my take on it. I wouldn't be here now if there were tuition fees at the height they are. When I started as an educator in 2003, when I trained, we had a talk in our hall to our whole cohort, and there was a massive cohort of people trained in my university at that time across 6 different subjects. And me being me, of course, I was not being silent whatsoever. But above me, down below, lecturing us was a schools minister who all used to work in education. And I asked him at the end, put my hand up and said, right, how can you stand in front of educators here and tell us all about the value of education and youth parliament and all that when you have imposed tuition fees? And those tuition fees were just about $3,000 then. I protested in 97 when I was a student myself. First time I went on a protest myself without my parents. And that was my first sort of single protest, was against the introduction of tuition fees. Even though they weren't going to impact upon me, it was about the next generation. Same as a teacher, it's about the next generation. I think it is disgusting. I think it is immoral. I think it is unfair. I think it is generationally unfair. I think when you factor in the house prices, when you factor in wages, when you factor in debt, this generation of young people are getting climate change. They're getting a lot of things pushed upon them and a lot of cans kicked down the road. Now, the triple lock in pensions would more than pay for tuition fees to be scrapped, and for every child who needs to, wants to, and has the ability to, based on their ability, not their ability to pay, to go to university. And that's what I would do. I think it is unfortunate that political parties make pledges and do not follow through them. That's twice. We had a previous, very famous pledge from another political party who said, we will not put fees up, and they lost the youth vote. I think I would feel very used if I was a youth voter and heard that pledge, voted a certain way, and then felt betrayed. And I think there's not just about that. I think when I look at young people in the careers, there's no reason why young people should stay in this country at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, just for balance, though, I really get that. But
I would think very carefully about whether I would be loyal to a country which isn't as loyal to me as a young person. Yeah, and it's hard as an educator to say to young people, stay, invest, come, this country cares about you. But by the way, if you want to educate yourself and better yourself, we're going to financially punish you and put you into absolutely, completely, they find the money when it suits them. They find the money for banks. They find the money for many other things. They can find the money for our kids, and they can find the money to fund our children through education, which will benefit our country, benefit the future, and literally be short-sighted as it is. It's some social mobility gap has to be closed, because the unintended consequences of the social mobility gap being as high as they are, we can see them. We can see it in health. We can see it in crime. We can see it in all of those social statistics, which are absolutely damning. And there's no greater cure for all of that than a better education system which grows our young people, gives them hope, and does not punish them for wanting to better themselves.
I'm going to chip in, bro. It's important that we kind of hear some from. I really appreciate your kind of perspective. I'm not kind of disputing that, but I just want to kind of.
My view hasn't changed since 1997. I'll be honest.
Get some other things. So the Russell Group has said, which represents 24 universities, has said this is an important thing to ensure the future of the sector. And Bridget Phillipson herself has said, in the months ahead, we'll publish proposals because universities, as across our public services, investment can only come with the promise of major reform. So this, I don't know, I think it kind of suggests that this is kind of a short-term measure based on kind of the economic situation that the country has found itself in. However, the graph doesn't look good in terms of the last couple of years. Since at least 2015, that projection has kind of increased rapidly. In terms of students, Martin Lewis did quite a good kind of piece, kind of supporting students, because I know a lot of students are really kind of concerned about, what does this mean for them? So, as always, there's kind of voices out there that are supporting students. But I've had that conversation, and, I'm sure lots of other teachers have had, where students have said, I am not going to university because of this, particularly in working class communities that we work in. It's a huge barrier to access university.
You tell me what the point in me in going into a working class deindustrialized community, a slog on my guts, right, trying to change outcomes, trying to put ambition, trying to rescue communities, all right? And then you get undermined by government policy who are claiming that there's no money there when there's money. There's always money. This is the sixth wealthiest country in the world. And I'm going to say this again. I don't know what is wrong with England, because why are Scottish teachers paid more than English teachers? And why do they go free in Scotland but not England? That's discrimination. I'm sorry, that's not right. It's meant to be the United Kingdom. How is that fair that in one part of the United Kingdom, the teacher's paid more and the children go to university for free? And in fact, let's be honest about it, cost of living in Scotland's a lot cheaper. So that's not justifiable. It's not right. It's not fair. It's not equitable. I don't know why people aren't protesting more about this or saying, because we just go on to accept it. Because I'm sorry as well, some universities are absolutely, they've got plenty of money to put up brand new buildings. Yeah. Some universities sitting on a lot of land. Some really wealthy universities, some of the the traditional old school universities, they've got huge amounts of money in bank. Yes, again, like things like the Church of England and the monarchy. Yes, it's an asset. But when they're crying poverty and you're looking at what some of the vice chancellors and people like that are paid, It's not like the university lecturers are walking away with golden tickets. They've been on strike because of their pay.
Yes, some of them have been quite poorly paid, haven't they? And they've got all the pressure.
Considering they're academics. And we should be paying our academics more. We want academics to be. We want a country with academic people. We want a country with people with intelligence. We want a country of skills. We want a country of young people who drive and strive and are motivated, not a country of people who go to university only if they have the financial backing. I mean, it's just wrong.
So give you some kind of actual figures here, Brent, because this is quite interesting. The BBC revealed that almost 1.8 million people were in at least £50,000 worth of debts, student debts. And data published in July showed that 61,000 loan holders had balances of over £100,000, while another 50 each owed upwards of £200,000. I mean, that they are astronomical figures, and there's no guarantee, because of the way the UK economy is performing at the minute, that amount of debt is going to give you kind of a lifestyle and income to kind of justify that amount of debt.
There is something else that's been really bugging me for a long time, and I can't put my finger on it, and I can't put my finger on why. And I'm not always a big fan of Tony Blair, but he had the whole 50% go to university, which many have now said is a mistake. Why? Why is it a mistake to want your children to strive for higher level education? And then you get the attack on, oh, well, we need degrees that, we need degrees that are valuable and financially viable. I did art GCSE. What did I get out of it? I tell you what I got out of it. Creativity, confidence, stoicism, resilience, hard work. That's the thing. We should be giving our children, you do an English degree and say to yourself, you might not end up using it. But the thing about it is we want kids to enjoy learning, to want to better themselves. We are punishing people for wanting to improve themselves. I mean, they're kids. We want our kids. And it completely contradicts. We're told, for instance, English is a core skill. English is a core skill. English is a core skill. But, get to university, do business instead. It's just disconnected. It's just massively disconnected. And it's not fair. It just, for me, I think the Labour government have made a mistake here. And I think they made a mistake because I don't think it's right. I just don't think it sits with me as an educator. It really rankles me because
is the gamble that I'm taking out £9,000, so what's £500 more? Is that the gamble?
No, it's the signal as well. It's not just that. It's the signal it sends of it should be moving the dial the other way. It should be helping these young people, not putting an extra barrier. And that's the signal. But also, I haven't heard Labour challenge the previous rhetoric of the previous government about devaluing degrees. You know what I mean? Where's the defense of degrees? Where is the defense of higher level education? That I haven't seen that yet. What I've seen is that they're literally doing again. Is university just now about getting a job? Is university just now about what you earn? And looking at the way they value degrees now, it's got to be, well, what job have you got 6 months afterwards? Yeah, there is an element of we want people to have skills and employability. But one of the brilliant things about getting a degree is, it's, for me, it meant a lot from my background. It meant a status thing of like, I've earned that. And I think the devaluing of degrees by successive governments, the way they have hammered the prestige of it, I don't think is fair. I really don't think. And this is just the signal that says, well, whacking on a couple of £100,000, a couple of quid, because remember, accommodation's gone up, bills have gone up, now fees have gone up. So it's not just about the fees. Is that if you look at how expensive university, has got the books, that living costs have gone up for students just as much as gone up for everybody else. Yeah. So it's just not. It's not fair. I just want
to read that from JLB about kind of his comments about kind of Margaret Thatcher in particular almost destroyed the teaching of philosophy and theology in our universities as well. which is kind of an interesting point. But we are kind of out of time, unfortunately, this evening, and 2 great stories as always on Education Tonight. So please feel free to look back at our back catalogue. You'll see the kind of range of things. We'd like to say thank you again to John Katz for sponsoring tonight's show, and you can use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your books at johncattbookshop.com. Next week, I think we're going to look at Send, because I think that's a kind of developing story, and it's vitally important that's going to be, I think, a big review. Bridget Phillipson's kind of made kind of a point of really putting that at forefront. Thanks to the contributions from JLB. Thank you to Lucy behind the scenes. Thank you, Brent. I hope you have a nice week, and we'll see you all
next week. We will also be then doubling over at 9 o'clock on Chris Wilkinson's as well about masculinity. So I'm double booked. I'm going to be then helping out with that, and we're going to have a really good show about global masculinity, and so that's going to be at 9 as well next week. So I'll do Education Tonight, and then switch into that as well, which would be really good.
And also keep following Teachers Talk Radio on Twitter, because you'll see that they've got an MFL live event as well. So if you're an MFL teacher, please look on their website and on Twitter to follow that up. Have a good evening, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.